Dana Delany has been an actress working nonstop in movies and then in TV since the 1980s. And it's an endless list of credits on IMDb up until about last year. But of course, she is best known for Gen X as the star of China Beach, a seminal ABC series set in an evacuation hospital during the Vietnam War that never really had blockbuster ratings, but for which Delany won 2 Emmys as Best Leading Actress in a Drama as Colleen McMurphy. And for her listeners, I assume well known for her supporting roles in movies like Light Sleeper, written and directed by Paul Schrader, and Tombstone, the hit Western she was the female lead in back in the glory days of the early 1990s. I remember her first in Masquerade, a sleazy, entertaining 80s neo-noir set in the Hamptons with Rob Lowe at his hottest and most naked. Also, Doug Savant in an entire scene in just his jockey shorts is particularly memorable for some of us as well. The kind of dirty R-rated noir that the code would never have allowed in 1956. Delany, and we're not going to belabor this, turned down the part of Carrie Bradshaw in Darren Star's adaptation of the Candace Bushnell book Sex and the City for HBO, and she turned down the role of Brie Vandekamp, the role that Marsha Cross ultimately played in the hit ABC series Desperate Housewives, though she did become a cast member of that show from 2007 until 2010. She has starred in so many TV series throughout the decades, always working, that I sometimes just can't keep up. Hand of God and Body of Proof among them. The last series was only from a couple of years ago on CBS called The Code, and we will find out later what she is up to next. You were raised in Stamford, Connecticut, and have said you wanted to become an actress at an early age. What were the fantasies of being an actress? Meaning, I guess, why do some girls want to be actresses, and why are some girls not interested? I mean, one reason you said is that girls become actresses because they want attention from their parents. But is there something in the makeup of someone who wants to be an actress compared to someone who, say, doesn't? I know your parents were big moviegoers, and they went to the theater a lot, and they took you. Was that somehow the beginning of why you wanted to become an actress?
Oh, gosh. I find that I learned a lot during this pandemic because I'm really a loner. I really am. And I'm comfortable being alone, and I don't really know how to reach out and be social. I don't know how people do that. I never understood that as a kid. So I think with plays, I could be in a social situation and then be somebody else, and I didn't have to be myself, and it was just sort of an easier way to exist, I think.
It might be because you're a Pisces.
Yes, as you are.
As I am, and I feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
People think I'm just so social because of who I am, and I'm just not at all. I am never lonely, but I am a loner.
Yeah.
Solitary.
Yeah.
That's the word. Not lonely, but solitary.
Yeah.
And I think that is part of the makeup. I know some people might not want to believe that, but I think it's true. I think it's true. But were there certain movies or plays or musicals that you saw as a child or as a teenager that were somehow overwhelming inspirations that that really had an impact on you? Not necessarily that made you want to become an actress, but what were some of those seminal early things that you saw that changed you?
Probably musicals, because, they're very easy for a kid to appreciate. The first one was The Music Man, I would say.
Did you see the original Broadway show?
I didn't. I did see the original Sound of Music on Broadway.
Oh, you did?
That was my first Broadway show.
And that was with?
The lead had left. It was Mary Martin originally.
Mary Martin
yes.
originally, right.
And then I got the second lead, whoever that was, some English actress.
And so that was one of the big ones.
Yeah. And then I would memorize all the songs. Like, back then you get the sheet music. You'd go to New York and you'd get the book of the music, and I would memorize it all. Oh. And, I secretly wanted to sing, and I'm still terrified of doing it, because my brother and sister told me I couldn't sing, all those things.
I remember the sheet music, getting the sheet music to the Sound of Music, because I was playing the piano at a very young age. And so I learned to play and my parents were big Broadway people. And I know that people think it's strange that my father, who was kind of a rough and tumble football player from USC and very macho, but he loved Broadway theater and he loved musicals. And it didn't really mean anything in that point. It was just a kind of entertainment that everyone liked. It wasn't sort of like there wasn't code for anything. Just people loved musicals. They were just. I remember them playing in my parents' house all the time.
Cast album. You had to get the cast
albums to everything.
We had every one. Did you go to New York and go to the shows?
You know what? I didn't. Not at first. My parents were big theater goers in New York in the 60s and into the 70s. So we heard the soundtracks that they bought on 8-track in the car. So I knew the entire score of A Chorus Line, for example, before I ever saw it. Because I was like 12. Yeah. But when it came to L.A. at the Schubert, I saw it. But I think the first play that my musical I was allowed to see was here in L.A. Also at the Schubert was The Wiz. In 1974. But my parents, I remember hearing a lot of Sondheim, A Little Night Music was playing, and it was just part of the soundtrack of me growing up, were all of these, glorious
You were
musicals.
Just enough younger than me that you got the second wave in the 70s, and I got the 60s. Like, I saw Hair. I saw the original production of Hair.
Right.
I was 14 years old. It was like one of my first dates. And I went into New York on the train with 2 guys, and it was a double date. And it's so funny. It was such a different time because my date was a black guy who turned out later to be gay, and, because I was bused to junior high school.
Right.
So that's how all of a sudden I had all of these black friends, and it was fantastic. We would hang out together. And so we went to New York, and we saw it off Broadway. And I remember sitting in the audience, and this guy crawling over the seats with his penis hanging out. And I'm like, what is that? And I loved it.
Well, I remember my parents took me to Equus.
Yes.
And it was, Richard Burton was no longer in it, and I believe it was Anthony Perkins. I think
he did do it, yes.
He took over. And nor were my parents prepared for the nudity.
Yeah.
The nudity. And I was, that was a seminal show for me. But certainly, I think The Sound of Music was one of the first movies I ever saw.
Yeah.
Because movies then played for years in theaters. And so I think The Sound of Music was it was playing theatrically for like forever. 65 to 1970. It never left theaters. But you also said that your exhibitionistic streak, if you do have one, was a reaction to your family's Catholicism. Was that kind of tongue-in-cheek, or do you think that's really true? Was it a reaction against it?
No, I think it's a combination of the times that I grew up in. I mean, that's how people behaved then. We would go skinny dipping. There was streaking. It was very celebratory to be naked. It was not something shameful whatsoever. And especially if you were raised Catholic, you like the dark and the light. You like the extremes, and so that was my other side of me. So I'm still like that. I'm still somebody who would like, let's go skinny dipping. It just is freeing.
Well, you should get an OnlyFans page.
No, thank you.
I mean, talk about nudity now among
that's a completely
millennials.
I see nudity as innocent. I'm not going to monetize it.
Of course, I completely agree. I also want to know if you were a big reader when you were growing up, because the people I talk to of a certain demo, of a certain age, I was reading, and I keep telling this story, I was reading the diaries of Richard Burton.
I love those.
The actor. They are so, until the end when he's not even writing the entries and he's probably too drunk. Yeah. But when he's really writing, it's so fascinating how almost every entry lists the books he's reading.
Yes.
Or going to a bookstore before getting on a plane and buying a bunch of books for him and Liz to read on vacation. And I was so fascinated by this notion, and also remembering going on vacation with my own parents, that they would bring a ton of books with them to lay on the beach or by the pool in Hawaii or wherever, and that books really acted like your phone. Now, that was a way to immerse yourself in another world, whether it was James Michener and you're reading Hawaii or one of his historical epics. It was really a way to gather information about another world in ways that we just don't have anymore. And people don't really read novels or read fiction in that way because we have our phone. And we can read anything. But do you remember certain books that you read growing up that had an impact on you as well?
Oh, God, yeah. When I would go to camp and, my parents would ship me off because they wanted to get rid of us in the summer, So I'd go to camp all summer, and my mother would, she's the one, and I got to give her credit, who pretty much started me on my film noir thing, because first she gave me all of the Ross MacDonald paperbacks. So I read every one of those.
Yeah.
And then I read all the John D. MacDonald paperbacks.
Oh,
so I read all of those.
God, I forgot about those. My parents had all of them as well.
Yeah, so those were my, my summer books that I read in camp. And we were definitely brought up to read. Yeah, you take your book to the beach.
And I also had a kind of high-low introduction to fiction, because my parents often read big bestsellers, but also a lot of the bestsellers there then were literary. Yeah. So you would have people like Gore Vidal, and you'd have John Updike and Philip Roth and John Fowles, or E.L. Doctorow on the bestseller list, and my parents would have those books. Yeah. But my father also liked Robert Ludlum, and my mom, they read whatever, the trashier bestsellers of that time as well. And that was my introduction, and I like both.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, I had no qualms about reading. I mean, now, maybe I'm not as interested stylistically in Jacqueline Suzanne or Harold Robbins or Sidney Sheldon.
Yes.
But I read them.
I remember my father had next to his bed, he had The Gingerbread Man and Rachel Rachel. Those are the two I remember.
Your father sounds pretty literary.
Yeah, well, Irish guys, they love that kind
and
of
of course the Ginger Man, because of that. Did he have a copy of
Ginger Man? Yes. Yeah.
The Ginger Man.
Yeah.
Did he have a copy of The Sensuous Man?
The Sensuous Woman by Jay. I that was my Bible. I studied that.
With the white cover.
No, I had the paperback.
Well, I remember that The Sensuous Man had a black cover.
Oh, really? Did it have a white one?
Because my mom had one and my dad had one.
God.
I had a 70s childhood.
Yeah.
Yours was more of a 60s.
Yeah.
Mine was more of a 70s.
Well, when I was, the babysitter, I would take down The Joy of Sex from the bookshelf of whoever's place I was babysitting.
Did you have Playboys?
Oh, God, yes, in the closet. Yes, I would go into his closet and read them. Yeah.
Playboy was a really great magazine then.
Yeah.
Really great. An introduction to stuff. You were in the first class at Phillips Academy in Andover that went co-ed. Mm-hmm. And this was your senior year of high school, essentially, right?
Right.
You said that you'd always wanted to go there after you read John Knowles' A Separate Piece, his classic prep school novel that I guess when I was 13 was on every single reading list you had to read when you were in junior high.
Yes.
And you were shocked to find out that it was an all-male school, that it really that it wasn't co-ed at all, and that you couldn't go. And then you found out that when it went co-ed, you attended it.
Well, no, what happened was my parents were in an ugly divorce, and we had moved. They'd split up. My mother stayed in Connecticut, and I went to Virginia with my father to Charlottesville. And in my junior year, I was in a private school there. And I'd gone to public school in Connecticut, which had been great. And all of a sudden, because in the South, the public schools were shit.
Right.
So I had to go to this private school. And I was reading all the stuff I had already read, like A Separate Piece. I was like, I already read this. So I reread it. And then I thought, I got to get out of here. I just, something in me needed to survive. So without my parents knowing about it, I applied to Andover and Exeter without knowing that it was the first year of girls at Andover.
Oh, really?
I didn't know that.
You just applied?
I just applied. And then when I got in, I went to my father and I said, can I go? And he was like, what? Okay, that's what you want. So then I went.
At Andover, you played Nellie in South Pacific.
Yes.
And you said that at first you had a bit of a hard time because you didn't really agree with the character and what she was about and her reaction toward certain things that were going on.
God, I forgot that.
Were going on. But in the end up, you loved doing it.
Yeah.
You loved doing it. But what do you remember what your initial trepidation was about playing Nellie? And was there something?
Oh, yes, I remember now. It was the whole racial thing with Emile DeBack. Yes, because
Right.
she had trepidations because I think he was dark-skinned.
Correct.
Yes, that's right.
And so how did you kind of, as an actress, let's say, process that into playing the role in the way that it needed to be played to make the musical work, of course?
Yeah, I think I had to put myself into the 1940s is what I had to do. Similarly, on China Beach, because I played Colin McMurphy, a Catholic girl, they had me be anti-abortion, and that really bothered me. But, they needed that point of view in the show. So that was a big discussion on that, too. But,
And I mean, do you at all understand, like, for example, all the problems that Scarlett Johansson has gotten in because,
Yes.
and all the pushback on social media about how people need to be the roles they're playing in a way? Does that kind of...
Well, it's gotten out of hand right now. I
Right.
mean, I think in China Beach, I was so aware of the impact the show was having in a social, political context that I wanted to be careful about that. But as long as we were showing both sides, it was fine. In fact, I just did a little short movie for some friends in New York last month, and it was kind of written for me and Leah Delaria to play wives. We were married, a couple in it. And then Leah couldn't do it because she's doing a musical here in LA. So they felt like they had to find a butch lesbian, like an actual butch lesbian to play that role, because that's how it was written. And I was kind of like, wow, it's really gotten that specific. And it ended up being cast with a wonderful actress who was an Iranian trans woman. And she was gorgeous and lovely and great. But I was like, this is interesting, these times that we're in, and great that she got work, because I don't think she gets a lot, as much work as she'd like.
But it is, I mean, not to belabor this, but it is getting out of hand. And being an actor is about empathy and standing in other people's shoes and locating a truth to that person. That's what you're trained to do.
Yeah.
That's what you can do that other people can't do.
Right.
And so, I think there was an overreach, and I think that maybe things are landing in a way.
So.
I hope so too.
Well, now the whole thing with casting, because, we have to have United Nations kind of thing. And what I've noticed as a woman, especially a woman of a certain age and a white woman, that the female parts are so expendable, and they always have been. They're just sidebars that if there's a female part, it's like, oh, we'll get a black person or a Latinx, if that's how you say a person. We'll just get rid of the white woman, because she's expendable.
And add to the fact that we're also getting older.
Yeah.
It's tough out there. It is tough out there. But this now reminds me of a moment, I guess it was either 1973 or 1974, and you have talked about that one of your pivotal movie experiences, you went to see a new movie by a young director named Martin Scorsese called Mean Streets, and that its impact was pretty big.
Yeah.
That you really saw a new kind of American movie that you hadn't seen. I mean, of course, in the 60s, there was kind of Bonnie and Clyde, and there was this emerging thing. But for this young Italian-American to... And Mean Streets is different than any of those movies. It is a jolting, new kind of movie. What were your impressions at that screening and at that moment?
Well, it's funny. I was just talking about this last week with Amy Robinson, who's in the movie.
The lead, right? She has the lead.
Yes, she does.
She plays Harvey Keitel's girlfriend,
I think that's the role.
The epileptic.
Yes, the epileptic.
Right,
Yes,
okay.
yeah. And I was telling her that I was at Andover, and my film teacher, who, was my teacher, which now you could not do this, he took me in, just the two of us, to Boston, to watch this movie. We went to the movies together. And, I had a crush on him. I think he liked me. Nothing untoward ever happened, but this was a big outing, for both of us. And it was us in Cambridge, and because he said, you need to see this new movie, because he was the one who showed me In a Lonely Place for the first time. So you need to see this new young director, because he was educating me. So we went and watched it. I remember just my mouth was open. Like you said, I'd never seen anything like it before. The spontaneity, the edginess, the real lifeness, that performance by De Niro, the danger, the sexiness to it.
Completely. The violence, the whole... I don't know. I recently rewatched it wondering what its impact was going to be. I'm talking about this year.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it in decades.
I'd like to see it again.
And it is, I think, it's aged beautifully. It's even better than I think it was. It really is so powerful.
It's still my top Scorsese movie, maybe because of how I saw it.
Taxi Driver is still
People were listing because of his
there.
birthday yesterday, I believe.
It
People
was
were
his
listing
birthday
the top
yesterday,
five.
that's right.
So I was thinking, what would be my top five? And I was thinking, definitely Mean Streets. Casino, I love.
Love Casino.
It's one of my favorites.
One of my favorites,
Taxi
too.
Driver, I love. And Kundun, I liked, because that's an interesting story.
I like the uncut version of New York, New York, which is very hard to find. And I really think that is an underrated Scorsese picture that very few people, even fans of Scorsese, have seen. And it's a terrific New Hollywood.
Yeah. I think I went to the opening of that in New York.
I saw it. My mom took me in 1977, but it had been completely cut by United Artists then, and his 4-hour version was chopped down to about 2.5, but was still really good and just a remarkable movie. But Griffin Dunn was on this podcast, and he was talking about being a young man and going to movies like Mean Streets and being young enough to let this new Hollywood wave of movies just blow him away. And it made him realize, this is what I want to do. I want to be an actor, and I want to be in these movies. Mm-hmm. And yet by the time he grew up to become an actor, they weren't making these movies anymore.
No.
And he said, I was stuck in a lot of 80s crap. I found myself in Who's That Girl? I found myself in movies that were not the movies that I kind of felt there was a promise that was being made, that we were going to be able to be in these movies.
He's right.
Did you feel any?
Oh God, yes. Yes. I got to New York and they were making Halloween and Pretty in Pink, and I was already told I was too old. I was 22, but I wasn't a teenager.
Right.
You know, and I looked like I was 16, but I wasn't a teenager. Yeah, it was just all that. Already they were doing like the franchise thing.
But when you went to Wesleyan for college, you said that the drama department wasn't that great, but the film department was really good. Yeah. Did that have a kind of impact on you as well?
Well, Janine Basinger, who's very celebrated, was the teacher there, and they've just named a building after her. I joked with her. I said, they're never getting rid of you because your name is on the building. And, and she's fantastic. She's 86 now or something, and she's still teaching,
When you tell me that story about the film teacher that took you into town to see Taxi Driver, it reminded me of, I was in high school and we had a history teacher who was really into movies, and he took 5 of us, all guys, to go see the Jodorowsky movie El Topo.
Oh my God, yeah.
Which is basically X-rated then. And it was at a revival theater because this was in the late 70s. But we were all 14 and 15, and we wanted to go, and our youngish history teacher took us. I think he would be fired today for doing that, but we loved it. It was a seminal experience. I don't know if I really like El Topo, but it was just, I felt I was growing up.
Yeah.
I felt I was becoming an adult, and I wanted to become an adult. I didn't want to stay a child forever and be a little boy or whatever, which seems to kind of be in the mix now. Yeah. I wanted to get out of that, and I wanted to enter into the world of adults. And with people like Mr. Baldwin, showing me that this other world existed it really helped my education. And I sometimes wonder if we're just not closing that down a little bit too much, and that kind of education, which is not just part of a curriculum, but part of something more amorphous in a way, about life.
I agree.
And so I don't know. So I think we're missing that in a way, and then the cultures are not really allowing that. And I think it's a big miss for people who are growing up.
Yeah.
But anyway, you graduated Wesleyan in 1978. You're in New York. You are working. Mm-hmm. You're doing commercials. Later on, you do a soap opera for a year. You do As the World Turns.
The first one I did was Love of Life, that had been on for 35 years. And I was on it for 9 months, and I joked that I killed it because it went off the air. That was fun. I played this girl who wanted to sleep with her father. But
it's House 79.
He didn't know he was her father, but she was going to get back at him,
Right. And you get that big supporting role in that play, the Broadway play.
Yes,
so that is happening.
Which I was not prepared for. I really didn't know what I was doing. It was so interesting, though. But I remember Pat Hingle was in it, and of course, I knew who Pat Hingle was. I was a huge fan of his from the movies. And you just need that little bit of encouragement, that I remember him saying to me, I think you're really good. And that's all I needed to hear. It just kept me going.
Your first movie on Wikipedia is the Lauren Bacall, Michael Biehn stalker thriller, The Fan, which Griffin Dunn says was also his first credit. I had posted a photo of a young Michael Biehn from the Fan. I had such a crush on him as a teenager. I posted it like last year on Instagram, just a still from him from The Fan. And Griffin was one of the first people who commented and said, I was in that movie. That was my first job that I had on that film. I think I was one of Lauren Bacall's assistants. I really had only one line, and I stood nervously by a door as she like screamed at someone.
Oh my God.
And you were listed as a girl in a record shop or something?
Yeah, I was a punk rock girl. Yeah, God, I think Griffin and I must have talked about that at some point. I forgot that. Yeah. Oh, I was thrilled. My God, Lauren Bacall, James Gardner. Yes. And I remember Michael Biehn was very serious. Very serious. He had a coach on the set with him. The original director had been fired, and Eddie Bianchi came in, and it was terrible. Another thing you could not get away with now, but he wanted to improvise before the scene, just in character. So
Michael did.
The director.
Oh, the director.
Michael did not want to improvise.
Right, got it.
The director wanted us to, and I was all into improvising. I loved it. So, he's like, he said to me, to my character, so what do you think about him? Because we worked in the record store together. And I said, I think he's a fag. And because my character would say that.
Right.
And Michael V took one look at me, said, I'm not doing this. Walked away.
And yet Michael Biehn's character has to pretend to be homosexual in order to murder a gay man to get the body or whatever. But look, that was 1981.
Yeah.
That was 1980. That was American Gigolo and male, whatever.
God, I remember the makeup artist was doing coke in the trailer.
I mean, just a very, very, very different era. But I'm trying to imagine. I didn't get to New York until the late 80s, but I'm trying to imagine. Was it all youthful fun? Was the struggle part of the excitement? I mean, you were hanging out at Cafe Central where I guess a young Bruce Willis was bartending at one point.
Yeah.
The legendary early 80s Cafe Central. For those who are way too young to know about this, could you describe what Cafe Central was?
Oh, it was of its time. Again, I was having, us regulars still talk about it. It was on 75th in Amsterdam, and it was just a joint. It was run by Peter Herrera, and Sheila Jaffe, who became a casting person, was the hostess. And it was just happened to catch, lightning in a bottle, and all the actors of the time congregated there. De Niro, Pacino, Walken, Andy Warhol came in, Liza, Cher. It was just the place to go. And if you're a young actor, I lived 2 blocks from there. So it became my neighborhood place. And, like we said earlier, I'm not really good at socializing. So if I would just go there, I would inevitably run into somebody, and have a conversation. And I met, Treat Williams there. We ended up being boyfriend and girlfriend for 5 years. And
I'm very jealous of that. Now,
it was just fun.
Treat Williams. I was going to ask you about Treat Williams, but Treat Williams, quite a gorgeous young man.
Oh my God, he was in his prime then.
Well, since I'm gay, I like the Treat Williams from '76.
The hair Treat Williams.
The Treat Williams in The Ritz.
Oh my God, really early, yes, with the bare chest and the blonde hair.
And in 1941 in his army uniform.
Yes.
That was, but still, even throughout the 80s, I mean, my God, Treat Williams was just so handsome.
Yes, he was.
You decided to move to Los Angeles, the decision being that you were, I guess, not going to be a stage actress, or the movies were calling. I mean, what was the main reason you made the move? I mean, the move does pay off because you're getting parts in Moonlighting and 30-something and Magnum P.I., and you were in Masquerade, and then you were in Moon Over Parador. You were in Patty Hearst, the first Paul Schrader movie you did.
Yeah.
Those are 3 pretty high-profile films. But what were the expectations at this point? I mean, what did you want? What were you looking for?
Actually, I knew I would end up there eventually because I love film. But I did a play in New York called Blood and Moon that Nick Kazan had written, Ilya Kazan's son.
Did he write Patty Hearst?
And did he write? I think he did write Patty Hearst. Yes, he did.
Sure.
Yes, he did. Yes. Right. And I had done it off Broadway, and it was a big thing for me. Like, it got a lot of attention. And then he asked me to do it in LA at the Odyssey Theater.
The Odyssey.
Remember the
Theater.
Odyssey?
Unbelievable.
And I
yes.
said, yeah, sure, that's a good way to go to LA. So I thought I'll just do the play and go back to New York. But then all these people came to see the play, and I started getting TV work from that. So then one thing led to another.
I guess because of the moment we're in, the question becomes that people want to hear some sort of response to because of Me Too and Harvey Weinstein and everyone else. Did you encounter anything like that during those early years when you were in LA? Was that as pervasive as history makes it look like when we're looking at it through 2020 eyes? Or did you deal with it in a different way? Because some women did deal with it differently. I remember reading about how Meg Ryan, whenever she sensed something was off in a room or a situation, she immediately opened the door and walked out. So she says, I didn't really see it because I didn't stick around. But she could have been lucky about that and just had that. But was that, as someone who was not there, was that really as pervasive, that kind of patriarchal sense of imposing oneself in the world?
I don't think it was just Hollywood. I think it was the world.
Right.
I mean, I was raised at the time where you were taught it's on you. It's up to you to deal with it. It's on you because men are not going to, so it's on you. You just had to watch your behavior. You had to, if people did do that, and they did, I was hit on all the time, you would have to be polite and kind of giggle and go, oh, no, thank you, you know, no, thank you. I mean, I did that all the time. And finally, I got so tired of having, because I was such an honest person, I just started, because I had a really hard time being dishonest. I just finally said, you gotta lie. And I said to myself, I have a boyfriend, you know, even if I didn't, I would just say, I have a boyfriend, thank you, but I have a boyfriend. And you get that little girly voice. It was awful, but you just, that's how you dealt with it, you know? It was expected.
I sometimes wonder about the notion, though, of beauty in Hollywood. And I mean, for women and to a lesser degree, men, but it's just part of the town's narrative. It's part of what it sells. It's an intractable part of the product and the way the town runs and what it wants and how it makes money. I guess one makes peace with it to a degree, but it's still a harsh form of rejection. And I guess you really do have to have an armor to play the game to a degree.
Yeah, and it sucks. I mean, the bottom line is, as you're saying, the question is she fuckable or not? That's how they cast. Is she fuckable?
Well, when you were first auditioned for China Beach, they didn't want you at
They didn't
first
want
because
me.
they said
They didn't think I was fuckable.
Quote, well, I'll say quote unquote pretty enough.
Yes.
But anyway, so how does one process that and not let it damage you? Because I think it does.
Something in me was like, I'm just going to keep going. And I think that's another thing I've learned now that I'm old is it's just consistency. Just keep at it, you know? You just got to keep going, and then eventually it'll pay off.
And of course it does, because you were soon named one of People's Magazine's 50 most beautiful people in the world. So fuck them. I mean,
fuck them. And believe me, I never thought I was beautiful. I never had a classic beauty. I was cute, you know, I was pretty, but I didn't have the bone structure to be a classic beauty. I had a little Irish face, you know.
You've said that in the end, China Beach kind of spoiled you.
Yeah.
Because you assumed that there were always going to be roles like Colleen McMurphy, and that you found out after the show ended that there really aren't.
No.
And that it's very rare to have a role that good and play it for 3-4 seasons or whatever.
Yeah.
Did a kind of disillusionment set in at a certain point, or a new kind of disillusionment? Because Hollywood is built on disillusionment. There's all different kinds of disillusionment at every stage in your career, no matter what you are. But did that ever come in? Was there ever a little like, oh, what am I doing? Or did you answer it just previously and you just soldier on?
Well, there was nothing else I wanted to do. I never considered dropping out. But yes, there was disillusionment, definitely. I'm not sure you felt this as a writer, too, that
oh, yes,
everybody loves you, and all of a sudden they don't love you.
Oh, completely.
And you're like, but I'm still doing the same thing. What's the difference, you know?
No. We're all Humphrey Bogart's dicks. That's where we all end up. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't care how successful you were. I don't care how many shows you sold. Yeah. That is where you end up as a screenwriter. So, you know, it's a casino in a way. Yeah. And you sort of like play, you know, you play the slots, you play play the tables or whatever. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. You usually don't. And by the end, everyone, I think, no matter what their profession is in Hollywood, ends up with that kind of disillusionment to a degree.
Yeah.
But you do. I mean, but you are in stuff. You're in a $100 million movie, House Sitter, with Steve Martin. You play his girlfriend and Goldie Hawn. You're in that really interesting ABC miniseries, Wild Palms, in 1993. You have a very interesting and pivotal role in another Paul Schrader movie, Light Sleeper. So things are kind of happening. Exit to Eden happens, a starring role, but of course it was a kind of a notorious flop. But you said honestly that you took it because it was the lead. I took it because it was the lead. Were you not being offered the lead so often, or what was the...
I felt like, I was kind of on a trajectory at that point because I did like 4 movies in a row. I did Light Sleeper, then I did House Sitter, and then I did Tombstone, and then everybody forgets with Exit to Eden 2 things. That Gary Marshall's movie right before that was Pretty Woman, which was a huge hit.
Blockbuster.
Huge. Yeah. And it made Julia Roberts a star.
Yeah.
And the movie was based on an Anne Rice book, who was also huge at the time.
Exit to Eden was based on Anne.
Yes,
that's true.
Yes. And that book actually had some really interesting things to say in it about women in power, and how ultimately, and dominatrix was like kind of a metaphor for women in power, and how you have to give up that control if you really want to be in love and all this stuff. I thought that's an interesting, metaphor there. So I actually took it very seriously, and then it just scared Gary so much, the movie, because I think it was closer to who Gary really was, that he started pulling back, doing reshoots, adding more comedy, and it just became this mishmash, and somehow I'm the face of it and I get blamed for it. It's ridiculous.
That's right. That's what happens.
Yeah.
I have one or two questions that I've been dying to ask someone, and it's about Tombstone, a Western from 1993 starring Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp and Val Kilmer in what many believe to be his best screen performance as Doc Holliday, along with an all-star cast including Sam Elliott, Bill Paxton, Powers Booth, Michael Biehn again, Charlton Heston, Jason Priestley, and plenty of actors who weren't famous yet but would be, including Thomas Hayden Church, Michael Rooker, Billy Bob Thornton, Billy Zane, who I guess maybe was kind of John Corbett, and with Dana Delany as the lead actress. It is a very difficult shoot because its original writer, Kevin Jarre, was also the director, yet he was fired about a month in because this was, I guess, his first movie, and he was supposedly overwhelmed by the logistics, and so the producer, Andrew Vanya, fired him, and he was replaced with George P. Cosmatos of Rambo 2 fame. And yet, ever since, there have been these rumors that persist that it was actually Kurt Russell, the star of the movie, who actually stepped in and directed Tombstone. Val Kilmer has said, now, it's Val Kilmer, has said that this is essentially true. But Michael Biehn has disputed this and says that was not true. You were there, and I know you were not happy with your performance in Tombstone. You call it maybe the weakest you've ever been on film, and it's your least favorite experience as an actress in movies. First, are those rumors at all even remotely true? And what was bothering you on Tombstone, and why do you look back at your performance in this particular light? You mentioned something about not trusting your instincts on that movie or something. What does that mean exactly? What was happening then?
Well, I haven't seen it in years, so maybe I would feel differently now. What happened was it was such a boy show, and there was just all this we're playing cowboys, and we're, in the summer in Tucson for 4 months, and then the whole thing happens with Kevin getting fired, and unfortunately, George came in, and George did direct the movie. He did. What happened was Kurt, God love him, was the team captain. And in the interim between Kevin getting fired and George stepping in, he was our cheerleader, and he kept everybody's spirits up and morale up, and he kept the thing together. He really did. So he gets full credit for that. But I remember, my big scenes were George's first day of directing. And I'd been told all this other stuff by Kevin, and then George comes in, he's telling me something, and everybody else is giving their opinion, and I was like, what do you want? And then it reminds me of Marilyn Monroe and Prince and the Showgirl with Laurence Olivier. Just be cute, just be fun. And I'm like, oh, how am I going to act that? And I just felt like I could have given her a lot more depth At the time, I felt like I didn't give her the credit that she should have gotten, as that person. But maybe I feel differently now. I don't know.
I think the conundrum in Hollywood is summed up, of course, by William Goldman's favorite dictum about Hollywood: nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
No one knows anything. Nothing is certain. No one knows that Sex and the City or Desperate Housewives are going to be anything. Darren Star had things that fell apart, shows that were bad. You just don't know. Mark Cherry. I mean, I think Desperate Housewives had that title that could have been, a buzzy thing for a while, but no one knows. And it's strange how that we are in a business where basically no one knows anything, and we're all trying to do business, and we're all trying to follow some kind of trajectory. And then, as I said, it's basically a casino. It's basically kind of luck. The best script can turn terrible in the wrong hands.
And we're all just trying.
Always trying so hard to read. But I guess part of the magic for some people is they don't, and they just get through it. I think a lot about Fitzgerald coming out here to Hollywood, thinking that he's going to write the best script possible, as good as one of his books, and it will be made into a masterpiece. Never happened.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen that way. And then Faulkner comes out and says, "Okay, what do you want? What do you want me to do?" Okay, so the girl's going to get the gun. They're going to burn down the house. They're going to murder the parents, and then he's going to drive off into the forest. And the executive will go, "Oh, well, that's pretty good. How long do you need to take to write that?" And Faulkner will say, "I don't know, 2 to 3." And they go, 2 to 3 weeks? He said, 2 to 3 days. I mean, Faulkner saw it as kind of the game it was, and Fitzgerald, who just took it so seriously, wanted it to work so badly for him, got destroyed in a way. So it's such a strange business. I mean, the best scripts I've written 10 years ago, 13 years ago, flump around. Flump, is that a word? Yeah. And, kind of development hell. And then some stupid horror movie I wrote gets made. And, it's just the name of the game. It's either keep playing or get out.
Well, I got to tell you, I was on the set of Less Than Zero.
Why?
Because I was friends with Jamie Gertz then. And we still are, but we were new friends then.
Yeah.
We had done an improv group together. And so I visited her on this set. And I remember it was the party scene at night. It was beautiful. Christmas, yes.
Icebergs in the pool.
That was there. Yeah, that was happening. And that's when I met Harley Payton, was that?
Who did the screenplay.
Right. And Andrew and I are now friends. Oh, and also, I went to Andover with Jimmy Spader, so I knew Jimmy.
Oh, you knew Jimmy?
Yes, he was a little bit younger than me in Andover.
You know who else was there that night?
Who?
Brad Pitt.
That I do not remember.
His first job as an extra. He's a bartender.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That was a pretty. God, the name of the woman who did the set design on that was just. She did a remarkable job. I want to say Barbara. Oh, I don't remember who it was, but anyway. So you were on that set.
I was on that set.
1987. Yes. You were wandering around the Less Than Zero party set.
Yes.
Now that we're talking about this, what was your happiest moment in Hollywood, and what was your least happy experience?
I love doing China Beach.
That was just by far just.
Yeah, I just went to work every day, excited, challenged, scared. Which is what you want. You want to be scared, and then remember driving home at night from fucking Indian Dunes, after 16-hour days that I should not have been driving, just thinking, I did it. Okay, I did it. Feeling the sense of accomplishment.
And then winning Emmys for it.
Well, that.
I mean, just.
I was so young then. I was like, oh, I'm embarrassed. I don't do this for awards. I was still that person.
And least happy experience.
Oh gosh.
Doesn't have to be a particular thing, though it could be.
Well, now because we're talking about this, it's that feeling of shock of realizing what happened. Everybody loved me. Now everybody hates me. And just sort of not understanding that. It was so shocking to me.
And it's not personal.
No, but you feel it.
Personal.
You take it when you're young. Now I know.
Right.
But then I did not know. And I thought, I'm doing something wrong.
It's kind of like aging in a way. You sort of resent the notion that you are not in the biological mass that is searching to mate constantly.
Yeah.
And you notice you're not getting those looks in the supermarket anymore.
Yeah, it is like aging.
Though So that's why I used to go to Palm Springs and hang out in Jensen's, because older guys would cruise me when I was 48. So maybe, but not here in West Hollywood, where my God, Todd at 33 feels old. You know,
well,
so,
good for you.
It's sort of, well, you know, he's in.
But I had a physical manifestation of it, because the day before Exit to Eden opened and just got trashed, this is back in the day when they dropped scripts off on your porch. You know, they would fling them over the fence. I would be getting $1 million offers. You know, which is a lot back then.
Yeah.
You know, thrown on my porch, stopped the next day, overnight. It's amazing how quickly it happens.
I was going to ask you about Treat Williams, but I know our listeners, and before we get into Glory Graham, I know our listeners will be very interested to know that you also dated Don Henley from the Eagles.
I did, yes.
And what was Don Henley like? I guess
I love Don Henley. I love him. I like curmudgeons. I really do.
Me too.
Yeah, I like people who are angry and for the right reasons. You know, he's angry about things he should be angry about. You know.
And when was this?
This was oh God, this is very Hollywood and rock star. I did an episode of Moonlighting with my friend Bruce Willis, and I was bringing up all of my film noir heroines. I was very much Gloria Graham. In fact, when I auditioned for it with Glenn Gordon Caron in New York, and he was describing the character, and I said to him, "Oh, you mean like Gloria Graham?" And he goes, "Yes." So I played it like Gloria Graham. And I did this scene with Bruce where I had like a short skirt and big famous episode, and Don Henley watched it on TV. Like the rock star he was and is, and he called up Lori Rodkin. Do you remember Lori Rodkin?
Of course, because I met Lori Rodkin when she was dating Judd Nelson.
Yes, there you go. Wasn't she his manager for a while?
She was his manager,
yes,
and
yeah.
that's how, when I met Judd, I met Lori.
Yes, so she called me up and said, "Would you be interested in going out with Don Henley?" And, you know, being from the East Coast, I was not an Eagles fan. We didn't, you know, it was like that East Coast, West Coast thing. I was like, I guess? I had to look him up. But it was fun. It was really, you have to have one rock star experience, you know. And we were, you know, he was dating other people. He was in between serious relationships.
We usually ask people at the end of the podcast, apropos of nothing all the time, what do you think of the Eagles? And I think I'm going to ask Dana this now before we go into the break. So what do you think of the Eagles?
Well, now I love the Eagles. I mean, one of my favorite songs is Not Enough Love in the World. I mean, that song, I will start crying whenever I hear it.
That is a Don Henley song.
Yes, it is. That's a Don Henley song.
It was a single off Building the Perfect Beast, I think.
Yep. And supposedly it's about Lois Childs, I believe.
Really? He Lois Childs. That's a name we haven't heard of in a long time.
Yeah, they dated for quite a while.
Don Henley got around.
He's a rock star. He's Don Henley. And he's smart and he's generous. He bought me like my first Harvey Leger dress, you know? I mean, he just was like that guy.
Wrong profession. I meant wrong profession. First of all, Dana, I want to know why you wrote this piece about Gloria Graham for Noir City, which is a publication I never heard of before. And now there's been about, I think, 22 or 23 issues. Fascinating. It is a fascinating magazine. Yeah. And I went back and got older issues as well. For anyone who's interested in film noir, Noir City is a must. You can buy them on Amazon. Have you written other articles about film? It's such a well-written, intelligent piece. It's personal. It's compelling. Were there writers who influenced you in terms of your prose style, which is very simple and direct? You're just telling the story. That's nothing fancy. But was there anybody who influenced you about how you approached writing about this actress and her films? Were there examples of writing that were inspirations? And also, how did this piece come about?
Well, I'll start with how it came about, then the rest follows. Again, the pandemic and Twitter, and this guy, Vince Keenan, who's the editor of it, reached out to me on Twitter and said, would you like to write about your 5 favorite film noirs? Because you seem to like film noir. Through Twitter, he found this out. So I said, yeah, sure. So I started thinking about, well, what are my 5 favorite film noirs? And I realized most of them had Gloria in them. So I emailed him back and said, I actually would really like to write about Gloria Graham, and maybe just all of them be Gloria Graham film noirs. And then he said, well, we'd love to have an actor's take on another actor. We love that kind of thing. Would you like to just write about Gloria and her acting? We want to know your take on her acting. I was like, okay, I would like that, because I feel like her acting has been eclipsed by all the gossip about her and her personal life, and I really want to focus on what a great actor she is. So he said, and we'll pay you $300. I said, oh, thank you.
Well,
he
that's
said,
something.
And he said, and we'll need like 3,000 words. I said, okay. I didn't know what 3,000 words was.
Right.
So I had to go on Word and look it up. And then, because I am an obsessive and I love research, I watched 44 of her movies and TV shows. You can find a lot on YouTube, all of her episodes of Burke's Law and things like that. A great episode of Then Came Bronson, really good one. So because I was probably putting off writing, I kept watching more. And then I thought, well, why do I want to write, that same thing, why do I want to write about her, and what does she mean to me, and this needs to be personal, otherwise what's the point? And so I just started thinking about it, and I just went on instinct of, I've never written anything before, and I just kept writing, and I knew it had to be personal, and I knew I wanted to write about her as an actor and not write about the gossip. So it took me 6 months. And I felt so guilty about how long it was taking me that I started contributing to the Film Noir Foundation more money just because I was guilty. I kept sending the money. And he said, you can stop sending us money. And then I finally said to him, look, I know you asked for 3,000, but it's up to 9,000 now. And I just want to warn you. And I'll just send you what I have so far. And so I sent him 9,000 words. And then he said, I sent it to Eddie Muller, who's the guy who runs the foundation, who's the head of, Noir City on TCM. Mm-hmm. He said, I sent it to Eddie. We both read it. And we decided we want to make it the cover story. And I was like, what? Really? And then he said, but we have a few changes. Our young readers don't necessarily know who she is. So could you fill in her biographical stuff more? Because it was really just about the work. And I was like, shit, I wanted to avoid that. I wanted to be about her work. So I went back and did more research, and I read all the Nick Ray books, which took me down another rabbit hole, which I would love to talk about. And so I was very careful about her personal stuff because I'm really protective of her. I think she was a wonderful human being, an emphasis on human. I can relate to her in so many ways. And there have been people, there's a lot of podcasts now about movies, and, they're very big now. And I remember there was one female podcaster who actually called her a nymphomaniac, and it made me so angry because she wasn't. And for a woman to call another woman that just pissed me off so much that I just wanted to really protect her in this article. So that's how it happened.
I am, as a reader, grateful that you placed the performances in context in terms of what was going on with her. It's sometimes hard. I mean, I know it's hard to talk about some of the more, I don't want to say that, it's just life. It's just life.
And also, as an actor, what I think of when I think of a performance? I think, well, who was I dating then? What was I going through? That's how I place things in my life.
When I wrote a novel, I mean, it's so much of it is influenced, and it's created by what's going on in my life. Now, I know acting in terms of what she was doing they were jobs that he was working in movies that she was not writing or directing. But there is a very interesting trajectory between what is going on in her personal life, and that does ultimately affect the performances. Sometimes in great ways, and then sometimes in ways that aren't so great. But I also want to ask you, how did that gig as primetime guest host on Turner Classic Movies come about? You were filling in for Robert Osborne, I think?
No, I did one a few years ago where I filled in when they were, just, they didn't have anybody there. I mean, Ben Malkowitz had not come in yet. So I did like, Myrna Loy was the star of the month, so I got to do all the Myrna Loy movies, which was great. And then, because Eddie does film noir, the Noir Alley, he said to me, I'd like to have you come on the show this past September. I did it. And I got to guest program a couple movies. So I did Alain Delon, Once a Thief.
That's what I saw.
And then I did...
I saw you do that.
Yeah, and then I did another one was... Glass Wall with Gloria.
I remember seeing you. I was in the middle of the summer of 2021 in a full-blown Alain Delon
Yeah, we
obsession.
need to talk about that.
And I had just seen La Piscine, which I'd never seen before.
I listened to your podcast about that.
And it was on Criterion, even though it had been playing in Manhattan in film form. It broke all the records there. It had been playing for 15 or 16 weeks. And of course I knew Alain Delon was, and of course I'd seen the earlier movies, but I had not seen La Piscine, which was kind of a revelation. And so when you were talking about Once a Thief, I guess it's a 1965 movie with Anne Margaret that takes place in San Francisco. A very strange picture.
Yeah.
Very
strange.
weird. And it was I think it was Delon again trying to break through to an American audience, and it never really happened for him.
Yeah.
Huge in Europe, but he could never break through to an American audience, which is kind of strange because he was so beautiful, he was so charismatic. I don't know if it was a language thing, but that's a lot of European guys made it. But Alain Delon just did
Eddie
it.
thinks it's a language thing. I don't think so. I think he has a European sensibility, which I actually feel like I do too, to some degree. And he just, when you see him in these movies that are very Americanized, he's too complex a being for it,
Right.
He just has so many layers that are just natural and instinctual. He's an animal, and he's got that sadness, which I love.
Everywhere.
But Americans don't like that. They don't like sadness.
No, they don't.
And I think that just didn't translate.
But let's start off with Nick Ray's In a Lonely Place, starring Humphrey Bogart and Gloria Grahame. You have said it's your favorite movie of all time. We all have our favorite movies of all time for different reasons, for whatever they mean to us. You even called your production company Lonely Place?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It might be, arguably, I think now, looking through all the noirs that we watched during that period, it might be the greatest achievement, the most complex achievement in noir. What is it about this movie that resonated so strongly with you and that spoke to you and cast such a spell that we are talking about it now? What is it to you that In a Lonely Place is about? What's its secret history? What is it that speaks to you?
Well, it's funny because I'm a different person than I was when I saw it when I was 17, and yet it still speaks to me, which is a sign of a great movie. Because when it spoke to me back then, it was about Hollywood, and it was about these failed lovers who should be together. It's so tragic they aren't together, And now that I'm older, I see how, fucked up Dick Steele is and what an abusive, why are they coddling this guy? The writer. The writer.
I guess we should also just kind of like lay it out what In a Lonely Place is about. It's about a screenwriter who's kind of on the rocks. Dick's played by Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah.
He is the suspect in a murder investigation of a hat check girl who he is last seen with.
Right.
And Gloria Grahame plays a neighbor in the apartment complex that they live in Hollywood. Yeah. She's an actress of B movies.
Right.
And they fall in love. I don't want to give anything away, really, but it really becomes a movie about mistrust.
Yeah.
And it's really about how she thinks he might be the murderer of that hat check girl because of his own demons
Right.
and his own rage. And she sees it played out. And so you know, ultimately, it is a tragedy because
It is.
of what,
Like I said, it's a Greek tragedy.
of how it ends, because
It's
it
his
doesn't really,
It's his character undoes him.
his character undoes him, and he loses what could have been maybe the love of his life, the
Right.
person who saves him.
Right.
And also in the middle of the movie, because he's with her, he does have a second life in a way, and he does begin to want to work on this thing. But anyway, just so I know there are plenty of people probably who will now watch It's in a Lonely Place because of this, but just want to lay it out that that's what it's about. Gloria Graham in it does, I think, and now it is true, when you listed all of the movies in the Noir City piece that you wrote, I thought I think I've seen the major ones. I don't think I've seen all of them. I certainly hadn't seen some of the ones that you really liked and talked a lot about. But what kind of actress, why also, I mean, and I know that your entire piece is about this, but there is something about her as an actress that resonates with you in ways that no other actress really of that period does. She's not the wife. She's not the woman who taps down her sexuality or creativity. She's something other than what is being kind of pushed out there in American movies in the 40s and 50s. Though I also wonder, well, where does that place Barbara Stanwyck? Where does it place Joan Crawford or Bette Davis or even Katharine Hepburn to a degree? What is it about Gloria Graham that strikes you as so unique as an actress in Hollywood during the 40s and 50s that no one else really compares? What is it about her that, say, these other actresses didn't quite have?
She had desire. She had such desires and appetites in her. And not just for sex, but just for everything, you know? And like I say in the art, it's the opposite. She somehow instinctively knew you could be funny one minute and serious the next. And just, she was so quicksilver in her mood changes that you had to keep up with her. And I love that because it kind of kept you off center watching her. And I don't know, I think she knew exactly what she was doing. I think she was trained by her mother. She worked things out ahead of time a lot. She somehow knew what she was going to do, but also could be in the moment at the same time, which it was very smart performances.
She was born in Los Angeles, and both her parents were British, actually.
Yeah.
Her father was an architect and an author, and her mother was a British actress and also an acting teacher. Gloria attended Hollywood High and then dropped out to pursue an acting career. What do you know about her childhood and teenage years?
Well, it's funny because now that I live in Ocean Park in Santa Monica, and that's where she was born. So,
Oh,
and she lived there when she was a young child, and then they moved to Hollywood. I think her parents' divorce really affected her. I think that her father was sensitive. He was very artistic. He didn't really make it in Hollywood. The wife, the mother, was sort of the driver of things. And then the father left, and he went back east and lived in Massachusetts. And I think she felt abandoned, that somehow Gloria felt that somehow she had done something wrong. So she was always, I think, worried about not holding on to men, kind of thing.
Louis B. Mayer sees her in a Broadway show called The World's Full of Girls and signs her to MGM.
Yeah.
She makes 5 movies at MGM. One of them is a movie called Blonde Fever. But MGM doesn't feel they can turn this 24-year-old actress into a star. And so they sell her contract to RKO Studios. You think she's great in Blonde Fever. You realize watching it that she is a natural comedian and also dangerous.
Yeah.
She's got a danger to her, and that combination is just explosive. What else comes across in this debut performance that knocks you out, and why wasn't it working for her at MGM?
Again, like Ellen, I think she's too complex. I think she's playing too many things at once, which is probably why I relate to her, because I have been accused of that. You know, I've had directors say to me, just choose one thing. But why? That's boring. You know, why? When human beings have many things happening at once, you know, inside them. And I think that, you know, in the studio system, okay, you're this, you're that. And she couldn't do that. she was so many things.
Which is why she really didn't become that lead actress,
Yeah.
helming the entire thing
Yeah.
moving forward. That it just wasn't. I hate to use the brand wasn't
Yeah.
right in a way to sell those pictures.
Yeah.
She marries her first husband in 1945.
Stanley.
Stanley Clemens. What do you know about this marriage?
He was an actor, and they met in Texas on some, like, I don't know, maybe a USO thing or something. And her mother didn't know about it. And evidently they had very sexual, volatile relationship. He used to beat her up. They were very hot for each other. And evidently they might have continued their relationship until the day she died. I think there's talk of them having meeting here and there. And he died like a week after her.
Really?
Yeah.
Same age or older?
Same age, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people know this, but she has a pivotal role in Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life as Violet Bick. I don't know why I didn't know this. I've seen that movie so many times. I just don't connect Glory Graham in that movie. And she plays kind of the good time girl who goes bad when George Bailey is shown what life in Bedford Falls would be like without him. And I watched it again just recently. Did a whole Capra thing, and I think the movie is pretty magnificent. But what you do notice about her in that movie is that she really is unsentimental.
Yes.
There is no sentimentality to that performance, and you could play that performance it's almost built for it, and she just doesn't have it. She doesn't have it in her carriage, her expression, and she's great. Yeah. She's great in that movie. And to be fair, I think everybody is pretty good in that film, but she just has this completely different vibe. Mm-hmm. And now that we're talking about this, you begin to see, oh, she's never going to be the leading actress. She really can't be. She doesn't have what is necessary in this cinematic historical moment to move the thing forward. She's also in another movie I haven't seen that you liked a lot, a Red Skelton picture called Merton of the Movies, which I know you don't really like, but you think she's hilarious in it.
Yeah, she just makes the movie to me.
She plays a silent movie star. You think she's gorgeous in it, and she has this great combination of smart, dumb, sexy, aloof thing going on that really is just a delight. But I guess wasted in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Red Skelton fan. I just don't find him funny.
I don't know if I've ever seen any Red Skelton movies. He must have had a career in movies,
and
right?
he had a TV show for a while.
The TV show, definitely, but no, I haven't. So Merton of the Movies, you do not.
No.
Okay. Well, she becomes a star in her first noir film. I read somewhere, the tarnished beauty with an irresistible sexual allure is how she's kind of marketed. This is the year she moves to RKO, and she's nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress in Crossfire, one of many seminal noir pictures that Graham will co-star in. And in it, which I, again, watched recently, this is a different performance than the ones that she's given. Yes. It's a much more sophisticated performance than the other ones. And it's a style that she'll become famous for. Yes. She really is kind of cemented in her performance in Crossfire. And I read in your piece that was the movie that Gloria realized how to finally act in a movie. And I guess it's kind of about thinking and not showing in a way. And that was kind of a revelation for her. It only took her 2 days to shoot this role.
Yeah.
And what makes her so good in Crossfire? And also, what is Crossfire about?
Well, the original book was about homosexuality in the trenches in the war.
Did not know that.
Yes, I think it was written by Richard Brooks, who later became a director.
Okay.
And, of course, the studio didn't want to touch that.
Right, they changed it to race?
It was anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism, right, which was big then in the 40s.
Yeah. So that's what it's about, is anti-Semitism. And it's a wonderful movie. It's great. But she just, again, it's that yearning in her that she wants to believe that she can open her heart up to somebody, but she doesn't trust anybody. All the men are out to use her. The wives, are hoity-toity while she's the one who's actually taking care of the boys. And it's just this great juxtaposition of I'd like to be in love, but no, I can't. She just knows how to do both.
And who directed that? Edward
That was how do you say it? Dimitrick? Is that how you say it?
Right.
Yeah.
She often said, though, that she never truly relied on directors.
No, which I
and often
understand.
ignored them.
Yeah. And he wasn't a director that liked talking to actors. That's why she'd listen to the dialogue coaches, they were called then. That was the guy who dealt with the actors, which was pretty common then.
And did she ever have her mother on sets?
Yes, and like in Roughshod, Mark Robson sent her home. Directors don't normally like that, but she would work things out with her mother.
And because her mother was an acting teacher, Gloria kind of relied on her at times, almost throughout her career, because her mother outlived her, didn't she?
Yeah, I kind of got the feeling it was she trusted her mother more than anybody else, but also, do you really want your mother telling you what to do all the time? She listened to her mother's advice till the day she died when she was doing theater in England. She would talk to her mother about the roles.
Did Gloria have any close female friends?
Supposedly only Jeff, what's her last name, who is in a Lonely Place, the friend, the cop's wife.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
She was her friend. They met on Roughshod. She was definitely more interested in men. Yeah.
Well, here we get to Nick Ray.
Yeah.
There is a moment where our fates are sealed at some point in our lives.
Yeah.
And for Gloria, it was meeting Nick Ray in 1948 in a picture called A Woman's Secret. It was written and produced by Herman Mankiewicz, who co-wrote Citizen Kane, and was the subject of David Fincher's biopic from last year called Mank. Nicholas Ray was a director on A Woman's Secret, and he became entranced by Gloria. And she gets a divorce from Stanley Clements and marries Ray. And by the time of the marriage, she's actually 5 months pregnant with Ray's child, Timothy Ray. And to avoid a scandal, RKO pronounces that it was a premature birth, which is quite remarkable, I guess. But Nick Ray, what can we say about Nick Ray?
Well, look, I'm a huge fan of Nick Ray's movies.
I am too. Completely.
I actually, before I saw In Only Place, I saw They Live by Night, and I love that movie.
Great
so
film.
Romantic.
Yeah, great film.
And that was like his first big movie, which is amazing.
Yeah.
In researching the article, I found out a lot about Nick Ray, and I watched a lot of his movies. I think I've seen them all now. For as much shit as people give Gloria, Nick Ray was a lot worse. A lot worse. He was a user. He was an opportunist. He would use his sexuality. People accuse her of, having sex with a 13-year-old. Well, evidently he was sleeping with his sister when he was a teenager, from what I read. And another rabbit hole I went down was he was bisexual if it suited him, and had a somewhat long-term thing with Gavin Lambert, who he brought over from England to work on Bigger Than Life. But he was basically using Gavin, to write a script with him. And then also sleeping with women at the same time. And he was an opportunist, whatever worked for him. And he was a drug addict, and he was a gambler, and all those things. Alcohol, everything. So, it was no wonder that she was only 27 or something when they were married, and he was not really interested in being with her. He said right from the beginning, I never really liked her. He said, I liked having sex with her, but I didn't like her. Come on.
Well, he does, and something happens between the two of them, his directing. He also heavily revised the script for In a Lonely Place.
Yeah.
He does help her, as she helps the movie, give, I believe, her greatest performance in films. But it's also, as you point out, it's kind of an almost idealized version of Gloria that maybe Nick preferred compared to the other performances Gloria gave. This is a much more subdued performance in a way. She's, as you pointed out, more clothed
Yes.
in a way. She's a little bit more
Head
prim.
to toe. Actually, from her neck down, you don't see anything.
She has the one kind of nude thing going on.
Only in bed.
In bed, right.
Yes. And then she wears kind of a sheer black thing off the shoulder thing in the last scene when she's going to leave him, which I thought was interesting. All of a sudden, she shows a little shoulder.
Wasn't there a contract that Nick Ray
Yes.
and her devised together, or did Nick write it? What was this contract? And was it a publicity stunt? What was it really? And what was in it that is kind of probably shocking to us today?
Well, it was called the Mr. and Mrs. contract, where Robert Lord, who was the producer, drew it up, saying that Nick Ray's word was gospel. She couldn't question him at all. She had to listen to everything he said. She couldn't cajole him. She couldn't nag him between the hours of beginning of set, the end of set. Who knows? I mean, maybe because he experienced that on A Woman's Secret. I doubt it, but she signed it.
I should have had Todd sign one of those. I think things would have worked out a lot better.
But it's true. He did get a great performance out of her in telling her, I believe, do less.
Do less.
Hold it back.
Exactly.
Do it in the eyes. It's all in the eyes with her, and there's a twinkle there, and even the way she moves. Normally she's kind of sashaying, but she just glides in that movie.
But there's also a subtlety to her. I can't quite put my finger on it, because I can imagine any of the other actresses from that era playing it and going too big.
Yeah.
I love Barbara Stanwyck, but
too.
she would have been wrong for that role. Yeah. I can't really think of an actress of that era who could have played that role in the same way.
Who the studio wanted was Ginger Rogers, if you can imagine that.
That's the equivalent of putting Jane Russell, or I mean, I love Rita Hayworth, but yeah. I mean, there's just that role is. Yeah. I mean, and also, I mean, that's the kind of performance, the kind of movie, the kind of role that you really can't think of anybody in any way. There were rumors that Humphrey Bogart was pissed that Lauren Bacall, who was his wife, didn't get that part of Laurel Gray.
She had done a reading at their house. Like, he had the script. He developed the script. And then she was in the reading, and then Warner Brothers wouldn't let her out because Humphrey Bogart...
contract at Warner Brothers, right?
Yeah, because Humphrey Bogart had left Warner Brothers, and they were going to punish him by not letting him have Lauren Bacall in the movie.
Ooh, Hollywood back then.
The worst.
I'm sure it's probably... It's bad in different ways now, but still... That whole notion is just,
Yeah, it still goes on.
As we said, it's a movie about mistrust. It's about Gloria mistrusting Humphrey Bogart, and then he mistrusts her.
Yeah.
But you actually write that Nick Ray and Gloria Graham, despite everything else, really trusted each other on making that movie.
Yeah.
And they there was something about it that they had to protect in a way, even though... You point out they weren't living together, that she was living on Sunset Boulevard in their house, and that he had moved onto the sound stages of Columbia, where he was residing while they were shooting in A Lonely Place. Well, sometimes when a movie's more important.
Absolutely.
The movie is more important than whatever shit we're all going through. The movie is important. It also should be noted that In a Lonely Place was not a hit in 1950. It did not do well. And that even Howard Hughes, who owned RKO, said that he never saw it. Why do you think it wasn't a hit in that moment? And not that we're lamenting the fact. I mean, it's obviously risen to the top of the chart. But in that moment, what do you think? Too dark? It is, I think, Bogart's most frightening performance in a way.
Yeah, they probably didn't want to see him like that. Yeah, which I guess he was closer to that than people want to know. I think he had that hair trigger thing in him. He went to Andover and got kicked out, Bogart.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and he got kicked out for that very reason, because evidently he tied a teacher to a chair and dumped it in the pond with the teacher in it. So he had it in him.
Such a strange notion of a movie star.
Yeah.
I don't know. Gloria had ambitions. She wanted to be let out of her RKO contract. She knew that she had done her best work in A Lonely Place. Mm-hmm. She wanted the female lead in Born Yesterday, in the role that won Judy Holliday an Oscar for Best Actress. And she also wanted the supporting role as a woman Montgomery Clift murders to be with Elizabeth Taylor in George Stevens' A Place in the Sun, which is a part they got Shelley Winters an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. But RKO would not let Gloria out of her contract, and so she couldn't get those parts. This must have been a kind of blow to her.
Oh, huge. And she kept doing, kept trying to do Born Yesterday. She did productions of it in theater because she just longed to have done that part. I mean, Judy Holliday should have played that part.
Yes, of course.
I still think that Gloria would have been more interesting in A Place in the Sun.
Well, as you point out, and I think a lot of people point out, is that it makes it a much more complicated movie because Shelley Winters is Shelley Winters.
Yeah.
And she is, I mean, at least Gloria Graham. I'm not saying she could give Elizabeth Taylor at the height of her beauty a run for money, but much more so than Shelley Winters. And it kind of makes the whole thing more, I don't know how you put it. The movie, because it's about Shelley Winters and it's not Gloria Graham in that role, the movie becomes about something else.
Yeah, you think, oh, well, Montgomery Clift is so in love with Elizabeth Taylor. But no, he's in love with her money and her class. I mean, that's what the book is about.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
But in the way that, and then when you cast Shelley Winters, oh, well, of course you kill Shelley Winters.
Of course you hit her over the head with an oar.
Or in the middle of a lake.
Yes,
so,
dump her.
I mean, no, it would, A Place in the Sun would have had a ton more tension, I think, if Gloria had played that. But RKO instead has her do a movie that she has no interest in called Macao.
Yeah. Macau.
Macau, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Again, which I haven't seen. Should I?
It's fun. It's
Robert
fun.
Mitchum and Jane Russell.
Yeah, it's fun to see Mitchum and Russell just, they're so blasé in it. It's hilarious.
Gloria gets fifth billing as a croupier.
Yes. Uh-huh.
She said she tried to act as badly as possible in that movie.
Yeah.
That she resented being in it.
Yeah.
And you write that she couldn't do it. No. She could not act badly. No. It wasn't in her. Yeah. She actually couldn't give that kind of fake bad performance. Yeah. In 1952 and 1953, Gloria makes 8 movies.
Yeah.
Several of them classics, including a great noir called Sudden Fear, which was one of the films that I binge watched, which I did not know anything about.
I've never seen that movie before.
And it's terrific.
Isn't it great?
And it's Jack Palance and Joan Crawford. It's another San Francisco set thriller. And Gloria has the supporting role. I guess some of the tension on the set was that Joan Crawford had Gloria banned from the set during Joan's scenes. And some people think maybe it was because Gloria slept with Jack Palance before Joan Crawford ultimately did, and Joan was pissed and jealous or something about that.
Yeah, I know that Gloria slept with him, and Eddie Muller believes that Joan slept with him, so maybe Gloria got there first. I don't know.
But it is, for those who haven't seen it, it is really, really good, and Gloria is spectacular in it.
It's so good, and Joan is just so Joan in it. Joan at her Joan is.
But it's also Joan so good in it. She's in that place before she has tipped over into camp.
Yes.
It's on the verge.
Yes.
The mannerisms are there.
Yes.
The vanity is there.
Yes.
But she hasn't quite tipped over into it. And it still really works. And people tend to forget, watching some of Joan's early performances, of what a good screen actress she really was. I watched Grand Hotel recently.
Oh my God!
She's just remarkable in it. It's beautiful, funny,
so
natural.
Beautiful. Yeah.
100 million light years from wherever she ended up, which also gave watching that movie kind of pathos.
Yes.
Even though Grand Hotel is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But Graham finally wins the Best Supporting Actress Oscar for Vincent Minnelli's The Bad and the Beautiful, a kind of glossy melodrama about Hollywood. I really liked it. I actually like the kind of pseudo sequel he made, 2 Days in Another Town.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is a absolute delight. It's a very strange movie. It is camp. It falls into camp, and there's some great sequences in it. It's about a film company, I guess they're in Rome, and all the problems, the soapy problems that go on making a film.
It's that period too, whenever it was making
early
movies in
60s.
Rome. Yeah.
Early 60s Rome. It's just great. There's an amazing almost car accident with, I guess, Kirk Douglas, and I forgot who his passenger is. That is almost 1 minute of them spinning around screaming. That is just like, I don't know what everyone was taking. I don't know what Vincent Minnelli was on. But if you really, I mean, 2 Days in Another Town is great. But The Bad and the Beautiful is considered a classic.
Yes.
It's considered a classic, and it is considered a noir, even though it is a Hollywood movie. It is listed in books about noir, and it's Gloria plays the role of a kind of, I guess, a Southern belle, the wife of an author whose book is optioned by Hollywood, and so they go out there. I kind of
which she kind of convinces him to do it.
And
she wants to go.
She's only in it for about 9 minutes. We have to remind people that The Bad and the Beautiful is about like 3 stories that are all remembered by people who are talking
flashback,
about Kirk Douglas, who's the head of the studio and whatever.
Lana Turner and Dick Powell.
But there is something about her performance in The Bad and the Beautiful that bothers you.
Yeah.
Why do you think why do you think she won the Oscar for that particular role? She really wasn't up against anyone great. That you can understand maybe why she won it that year, but why do you think she won it for that particular role?
Wasn't she up against Gene Hagen?
She is for Singing in the Rain.
Yeah.
Yes, I would have given it to Singing in the Rain. That's true.
Yeah.
But why do you think she won the Oscar for that? And what is it about her performance in that bothers you?
Well, because I had seen so much of her work, and then I watched that again, and I can see her acting, and I think that we're supposed to see her acting because the character's acting, because she's trying to, sweet talk her husband.
True.
So maybe that's it, but I feel like it's a little too cute. It's cute, it's really too cute for me, and I think she's better at manipulating than that. She's much more subtle as an actor than that, and it bothers me that we have to see her manipulating and see her machinations, and maybe I just don't like the character. And because of that movie, I think men liked her. I think that's why she won it. It was men's idea, Hollywood producers' idea of what a woman should be. She's so cute and funny and sexy. And isn't she just adorable? Because I know she's manipulating me. And I just kind of was like, ugh.
The Glass Wall followed, and it was around this point in her career that Graham becomes, I guess at this point, somewhat over-concerned about how she looks on screen. And you write that this happens to probably every single actress to some degree or another. It's just something you just can't help it.
Yeah.
You become obsessed, maybe not obsessed, but concerned about how you look on screen. Yeah. It's completely understandable. Some do something about it, some don't. Yeah. But this is really one of the downfalls, in a way, for Gloria. She started thinking about ways she could look better in movies. And I guess it started... Did Nick Ray begin this with her by doing something to her lip?
I never knew it was Nick Ray. I just recently discovered that in a book. That
he put some tissue to...
It was during A Woman's Secret. She had which I do also, this, deep groove. There's a word for it, I can't remember what it is, above her top lip. That he thought if she put tissue under her top lip, it would fill it out a little bit, lift it,
Yeah.
So I guess she did that in A Woman's Secret. And he was playing with a lot of stuff on her in A Woman's Secret. She was like his doll, different hairdos, and it was just, she has a lot of different looks. So I think she started thinking there was something wrong with her, that, I need to fix this. So she started thinking she needed to, and she wasn't a conventional beauty, and that's what made her great, that she wasn't. She wasn't Maureen O'Hara.
Yeah.
She was just unusual, and she was her, and she had these beautiful dimples that somehow disappeared. But, everybody talks about her lip. They don't talk about other things that she did.
What was she doing exactly to her face, and what were her concerns?
Well, I also read that she, which is crazy to me because I wish I had that chin, she thought she had too strong a chin. And I didn't want to put it in the article because I don't want people focusing on this stuff, But if you look in a lot of her stuff, she has a scar on her chin where I believe she had like cartilage or something removed. She opened up something here under her bottom lip to somehow make it lesser, and you can, and especially when she gets older, you can see the scar underneath her lip, and that's really where she was playing with stuff.
Were a lot of actresses doing this in Hollywood during then? Was it as big a thing then in the 40s and 50s?
Marilyn Monroe was. I think she just went to better people, Marilyn Monroe evidently did a lot, but it worked.
Elia Kazan, Man on a Tightrope.
Yeah.
made right before he shot On the Waterfront. And you write that it might be Gloria at her, I don't want to say blousiest or whatever, but it's sort of her in her, she's free in a way, and you love it.
I love
you
it.
love this performance.
Yeah.
And you write that when she worked with directors who knew to let her run with her instincts, she was magic.
Yeah.
When a director allowed her to do this. And then there were other directors that didn't quite
Fritz
work.
Lang.
Fritz Lang comes to mind. But he did direct her in a great role,
Yes.
which is Debbie Marsh in another seminal noir called The Big Heat. A great movie.
Yep.
And she is fantastic
That's my
in this
second
film.
favorite of her performances.
She's just,
yeah.
she has a scene, not to spoil it, where she gets a pot of coffee or hot water thrown in her face by, I guess, Lee Marvin.
Yeah.
And she has a terrible scar for the rest of the movie. And she has, I mean, this is not a spoiler, it's a dark noir, but she has this beautiful death scene.
Yeah.
And she's just so good in it. But still, you know, she drove Lang crazy.
Yeah.
She drove Fritz Lang crazy because she never stuck to her marks, and she never played the same scene twice in the same way.
Which, you know, Pacino did, and it drove people crazy, but people weren't doing that back then.
Right.
You know, you just did your job and got out and went home.
But she thought Gloria Graham was such an instinctual actress in so many ways that she thought this was who Debbie Marsh was.
Right.
And that she inhabited Debbie Marsh as the actress playing her, and that it spilled over into the making of the thing. She was also at that time dating the comedy writer Cy Howard at this point. And she did bring him in to punch up her scenes in the script, which they allowed him to do, I guess.
I guess, yeah.
Which helped her
Well,
a lot.
It's such a great script. That's what was shocking to me when
So
I realized,
good.
how could you make that script better? And like as I said, my favorite line is, "I've been rich and I've been poor. Believe me, rich is better." I mean, it's just a great line. Cy did not do that one, I don't think, but he did do the when she walks in Glenn Ford's hotel room. She says, "Oh, I like it. Early nothing," which is what Cy had said about her apartment. And I have to say, in my piece, Cy is a little bit of the villain, but I talked to Barbara Howard, who was his wife after Gloria, who was Jack Warner's daughter. Barbara Howard, who's a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm going to her house in Palm Springs this weekend. And she adored Cy. She had a great marriage. She adored Cy. She was friendly with Gloria. So it's just, they weren't a good combination, you know.
So where does Gloria go now? You know, she makes The Good Die Young. She makes Naked Alibi. And then she reunites with Fritz Lang again for Human Desire. But she is the fourth choice for that movie. Yeah. Barbara Stanwyck, Rita Hayworth, Olivia de Havilland. And then they go to Gloria.
Yeah.
But you note the film that really begins Gloria's downfall is getting cast in the 1955 movie version of the musical Oklahoma. It is not only the most recognizable movie role of Gloria's career, it is also the highest paid she will ever be for appearing in a movie. She gets her biggest paycheck for being in Oklahoma, but she's wrong for it.
Yeah.
She's completely wrong in this big budget Technicolor roadshow musical. She didn't want to do it.
No.
But Richard Rodgers, who wrote the music to Oklahoma, said that she was his first and last choice in this role, even though Gloria couldn't sing.
Right.
And yet, it is said that Cy Howard talks her into it and tells her to do it, and that Gloria does it. But it was all, as I think you write, it was broad gestures, it was funny faces. She had to record her own singing in a kind of terrible way where she would lip sync it on set, and she couldn't sing.
No, but they pre-record, and she had to go note by note.
Right. So she did sing it.
Yes.
She wasn't like dubbed like Natalie Wood or Audrey Hepburn or whatever, right? So she actually sang the thing.
Yeah.
But she was not happy really making this movie. And the movie really wasn't that big of a hit or considered that. I mean, it was a big role in a big movie, but for you, you write that when you watch Oklahoma now, you see an actress in pain.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I loved her in it. I mean, everybody remembered Ado Annie. I used to sing those songs, I'm just a girl who can't say no. And I thought about it. I thought, why is it that Rod Steiger works in this movie? Because he's a serious actor, but Gloria doesn't, and she's a serious actor. And if they had only given her the leash that they had given Rod Steiger, who really brought a complex performance to that role, if they had let her be more complex and just plant herself, say, you know what, I like men. What's the problem?
Yeah.
She said that in every other movie she did.
Yeah.
And if somebody had just been on her side, and Fred Zinnemann, from what I heard, she was so uncomfortable because she wasn't feeling she was in her element. And on the set, she would start improvising because that's what she does when she's not feeling it. She wants to try things out. And it drove the other actors crazy. That's not what you do in a musical. You hit your marks because you got to do all these other things. And it was really sad, but because by the end of the movie, the cast wasn't speaking to her. And she's kind of, I think, a little oblivious to it. And then when they had a cast party, nobody would talk to her. And they all turned their backs. And that was when she realized, oh, they don't like me. It was one of those moments. It makes me sad.
Well, she marries Cy Howard during the filming of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And she makes 2 films that Howard tells her to make, that Howard thinks are good ideas. One is Stanley Kramer's Not as a Stranger, and the other is Vincent Minnelli's The Cobweb, which I, again, just watched recently. A very, very strange movie. An almost laughable Freudian drama set in kind of a mental, not a mental institution,
it is
a mental institution, I guess. Yeah. An all-star kind of soap opera
Lillian
from
Gish.
like prototypical mid-50s kitsch. I mean, it's like almost entertaining enough, but it really isn't really that all that entertaining. I mean, why are these bad fits for Gloria? Why should she have done these movies? Why did she do them?
I mean, she gives it her all. You can't say she doesn't. I don't know. As an actor, maybe that's all she was being offered. I'm not sure. At the time, I never heard it.
This is about 1955, and she's starting to turn. Audiences are starting to turn on her.
Yeah,
they're really not into her anymore. There's something. I don't know if it's that moment in American culture, but she has been known for expressing carnal desire without shame.
Right.
I don't know if that's playing in the way that it might have played in the dark noirs of that time. Exactly. And if an American cinema is moving into something else that just can't accommodate that in that period. I might be overreaching here. I don't know.
That's what I thought too. I think that at that point in the 50s, things were being tamped down a lot. And she's very natural looking in those roles. I think she looks fantastic in
hair
them.
Is messy,
unkempt
a little bit,
all that stuff. And she's showing sexuality, but you don't do that anymore. You're just a woman doesn't do that. And the reviews started to get bad about her.
Her reviews for The Cobweb were like the worst she'd received.
Yeah, people said she was mumbling, which actually I heard every word, so I don't know.
She started to stir a kind of fear in both men and women.
I think it was a Freudian fear, you know, of our ids. Our ids are too much,
Her marriage to Cy is on the rocks, ultimately, and it's starting to affect her work. And she really only has, you're right, one great performance left in 1956, and that's The Man Who Never Was. Even though, again, Ronald Neame is the director. They didn't get along.
No, she got along with Ronald Neame.
She did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why is this her last great performance?
Have you seen the movie? I'd never seen it.
I haven't seen this.
I had never seen it, so I had to order it. It's like an early procedural. It's like a episode of, I don't know, NCIS or something. But she plays this really complex role where she's playing a girl who doesn't know that she's being used for this plot against the Nazis. And she's great in it, really, and moving, extremely moving and funny, everything at once.
And this is very different performance from Robert Wise's Odds Against Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which is a performance that really bothers you. Yeah. This is you think that in this movie the cosmetic fixing has gone too far now. And her face is puffy.
No, that's in The Man Who Knew Too Much. And she looks herself more in Odds Against Tomorrow.
So it was in the Ronald Neame movie where that's where you noticed that, and that's what you didn't like about that. But in the Robert Wise movie, it's It
the
is
performance.
tamped down.
It's the performance.
So here we are, 36. She's washed up. 27 movies in 16 years, 3 husbands, 2 children. In 1960, Anthony Ray, the 13-year-old son of Nick Ray, comes back to her as a young man now. And she marries him for what would be the last time.
Her longest marriage, 14 years.
And Tony Ray was now an actor.
Yeah.
He was in John Cassavetes' Shadows.
Mm-hmm. And believe me, if you see that movie, you see why she was attracted to him.
Oh, yeah, really good looking.
Yeah.
Really good looking, yeah. They were genuinely in love.
Yeah, they were.
And they had 2 children.
Yep.
But Gloria's having mental problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not know this, that she was in and out of facilities and had 14 shock treatments, which was something they did then. But still, I didn't know that it had gotten to that degree. I guess they helped.
Yeah, you know what? They did that a lot then to women and to gay men. That's who they did it to.
You're right. We assume because we've seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest that they do it more to men than in reality.
No, it's to women and gay men. That's who they did it to. Because, let's just fix them.
Well, she was now really only working to support the family. She was appearing on TV shows like The Outer Limits and the other shows that you had mentioned that she...
Along came, was it Man Called Bronson?
Man Called Bronson,
yeah. Whatever it was, Along Came Bronson.
And then, in the late 60s into the 70s, she did what a lot of actresses of her era ended up doing. She did some low-budget horror films. Mm-hmm. Gloria said at one point, I don't think I ever understood Hollywood. What does that mean? That's kind of a haunting... I think we all agree with that to a degree. That makes completely perfect sense. But to actually admit it out loud is like it's gasp inducing, I don't think I ever understood Hollywood. Anyway, she spent her last years in the theater in England, and as I said, I brought up that movie that Annette Bening starred in. She did have that brief affair with Peter Turner, I guess, who wrote that memoir about their lives called Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. Did you see that movie, and what did you think?
I read the book when it first came out years ago, and I purposely did not see the movie because I have my own ideas about Gloria that I just don't want to mess with. And I hear that Annette is amazing in it, but I've not seen it, no. And also, I'm always, like I said, I'm protective. I feel like, that guy, I don't know about that relationship.
But Dana, you met Gloria Graham.
I did.
In 1981.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, what happened, where you were when you saw her and talked to her.
I was dating Treat Williams.
Oh, again. I'm so distracted.
And my father had just died at 56 from pancreatic cancer. And as you said, I was a daddy's girl. I was really close to my dad. And I'd just been on Broadway for the first time. And I just kind of was lost. I just kind of, didn't have my center. And I decided one Saturday morning to take this makeup class because I was about to go on a soap opera, As the World Turns, and I hated the way they did that soap opera makeup. It was that heavy, heavy 80s makeup. So I thought, I'm going to go to a class and learn how to do it myself so they won't, ruin me. So I went to the Film Center on 9th Avenue, which was upstairs at Starlight Cosmetics, which was very big back then. It was all those fuchsias that you wore to the discos, all those bright, glittery fuchsia makeups and turquoise and fuchsia. And I went up there, and there was like maybe 10 of us waiting for this teacher to show up. And I just sensed this presence coming into the room, and I see these little tight leather pants. And I look up, and then there's this white kind of fox jacket, and it was late spring, but she's wearing a white fox jacket. And I look up, and I saw the mouth. And I thought, oh my God, it was the mouth that did it. It was just kind of, pouty. And I thought, that's her, it's her. And I looked around, and nobody knew who she was, nobody. And my heart was pounding, and I was like, oh my God, it's her, it's her, it's her. And I thought, what do I say? And all I thought was, what is Gloria Graham doing here? What can she need to know about makeup? My God. And I just was watching her. I didn't say anything because I'm really shy. especially with people that I admire. I cannot say a word, could not say a word. And we realized the teacher wasn't coming, and we all got up to go, and I made sure I got in the elevator with her, and it was just her and me. And we go down, and I think she said hello or something, and I said hi, and somehow we got to talking about are you an actor? Yeah, I just did this play on Broadway. Oh, and did you see Lauren Bacall and Woman of the Year? And I said, yes, I did see her. Wasn't she great? And I'm thinking, Lauren Bacall, but she was married to Humphrey Bogart, and you were in that movie with him. And then we reached the end, and we hit the street, and we just said, nice to meet you, and that was it. And it turned out she was living in Manhattan Plaza then. That's where she lived. So it was right down the street, 9th Avenue and 42nd Street. And she went down there, and then I realized later she was going there to get a makeup lesson because she was about to do Light at the Sky in East Hampton at the theater there that summer in summer stock. And so she probably wanted to, get tips on doing her makeup for the theater. And then she went to England to do those plays, and she was dead by November of breast cancer. And that was it. And when I read that, I was like, I was meant to meet her. Wow. And of course I connected her to my father because he had just died, and I watched movies because of my father. So it was all very cosmic for me.